Is Torkoal the best Pokemon of all time? The answer is yes. Why is he the best Pokemon of all time? I mean, look at the moves, look at everything here. This is why Torkoal is the best mon. I mean, there's obviously better mons. It's Quagsire, that is the better mon. But let's look at Torkoal for a sec. Let's look at Torkoal's stats. What's Torkoal's stats looking like? They are looking good. He has got very respectable 70 HP, 85 in both his offensive stats, which is okay until you consider Drought. Once you consider Drought, it's incredible. You have 140 defense, which is also insane. 70 Spadef, which is pretty reasonable, and 20 speed, which, as you'll find out, is just fast enough, just to make it work. Anyway, with those stats out of the way, what does Torkoal actually do? Well, Torkoal usually, it sets up a Sun. It's a Sun mon staple. It's a fire type with access to Stealth Rock, access to Drought, access to stuff like Yawn, Toxic, all this. It's great. It's bulky utility. It's actually the best sweeper in the game. It's the best wall breaker in the game. It kills everything instantly. Now, why is that? Eruption. This move has 150 base power. In the Sun plus Stab is close enough to 300 base power. In fact, I'll do the math. Its base power is 337.5 with Stab Sun. It's just incredible. I have this calc. Alright, this is a wrong calc. Let's get, it's still specs. So let's change this back to modest, or mild, sure. Eruption is doing, in Sun, it's near enough, it has a chance of 2-hit KOing Incineroar. Incineroar of all things. This is like the premier Spadef wall for fire types, and it just doesn't eat it at all. It just can't take it. It's actually incredible. This mon does so much damage. Earthquake does less with max attack. Earth Power barely does any more than Eruption, but you want Earth Power there because it's pretty much always going to 2-hit KO Incineroar, which is just really good because honestly, Incineroar is probably one of your only checks. Because knocking off your item for some sets is actually devastating. There are a lot of sets, and there's a lot of moves that go for each set. For your fire-type move, on special sets especially, I think Eruption is definitely a pipe dream sometimes. I think a lot of the time you can't get an Eruption off too consistently unless the team's sort of built around it, as is the case for some Trick Room teams I have. I think Flamethrower or Weather Ball is very consistent just for doing damage. I prefer Flamethrower because you never know if there's another weather or something, but Weather Ball is usually going to do you better, and the fact that Torkoal gets it is very useful. Right here. I think Fire Blast is good if you want to use Eruption but you don't want to die, and you just want to miss all the time. I think these are your two other important moves, Solar Beam, Earth Power, and special sets. I think Solar Beam breaks pretty much every bulky water you can think of. Let's get Milotic, the very considered to be one of the best special walls for water types. And it can't take 2 Solar Beams. Let's get good old what's it called? Tentacruel. Yeah, that's the one. Tentacruel can't take 2 Earth Powers. 120 Speed can't take 2. This thing's a monster. Specs on Trick Room is a monster. With zero IVs, it hits 45 speed. Actually no. Where is it? Quiet? Yeah. 0 IVs, negative nature, it hits 40 speed. It's pretty much the slowest mon in the game. Go through the speed, you go down. Outside of Little Cup mons, I mean, you have Ferroseed. But, like, the things that are matching it is Escavalier, other Little Cup mons, and that's it. Like, when Bronzor is faster than you, you know you're pretty slow. When you're the same speed as Snom, you know you're pretty slow. The only mon that is actually, like, good, that's slower, is Stack Attacker. That's because this thing was just made for Trick Room. They gave it Trick Room, for God's sake, and it's not even a Psychic type. Like, actually. Like, if this thing's made for Trick Room, and Torkoal's doing a better job, you know, I think something's wrong here. How's Torkoal doing a better job? It functions better with the current Trick Room setter for UU, which is Bronzong, which is always going to be the Trick Room setter. I think Bronzong Torkoal is a really good combo because, especially with this set, which is Fire Blast and Eruption, it can do a lot of work for Incineroar, which is generally a huge issue for Bronzong and UU. I think being able to send Bronzong in turn 1, if they don't lead Incineroar, you can Trick Room up, they'll probably send Incin in, and then from there you can go hard into Torkoal. You're probably not going to like getting knocked, so you might want a different Mon as a sort of semi-check. Rhyperior on Trick Room is great, but otherwise, if you can predict a Will-O-Wisp or a Parting Shot, just getting Torkoal in just so it can do damage is really nice. And the fact that, like, even if it gets knocked, it can still do considerable damage to Incineroar is great. For Bronzong, anyway. Not great for Torkoal, because Torkoal just wants to do damage, and without its specs, it's not doing as much as you might hope. Specs is probably better, but I do sometimes prefer Charcoal on Trick Room, just for the ability to switch moves. I think being able to switch on the fly is very useful, and it can especially get people guessing when you start switching moves, but you're not taking Life Orb damage, or and you don't have boots. Because there's a lot of items you can bluff without it. If you're in a draft lead which allows fire moves, you can be drafting Fire MZ. If you're in a lead that, say, I don't know, there's other items it can bluff. It can bluff AV, technically, it can bluff with Expert Belt. There's a lot of moves it can bluff just holding Charcoal, which is really useful for it. Did I say moves? Yeah, I did. There's other things it can do, though. Zooming out, you'd have Inferno, which is incredible for me, specifically, because Inferno Blunder Policy lets you hit the grand total of 304 speed. Now, why is 304 speed important? It's because Rotom Wash hits 298. Also, I say 3... Yeah, I said 304. Yeah, Rotom Wash hits 298. So you're outspeeding Rotom Wash, and I believe you Oko with Solar Beam pretty much 100% of the time. You're also outspeeding Drill by 2 points, Jolly Drill, which is another really useful tier that you can get to. And another move you can run with the Inferno set is Stomping Tantrum, which is specifically for Excadrill even. Where you can Inferno, you either hit and kill it, and burn it if it doesn't die, if it has, say, Oko Berry, and then if you miss, you become faster than it, you'll live a hit because you're Torkoal, and then you get the Stomping Tantrum, which does 150 base power. It's just Groundium Z. And honestly, it's actually incredible. You're never going to pull this off in a ladder match at all, ever. Don't think you can, because you won't. But if you do it at all in a draft match, you've pretty much won. Just from the sheer fact that, like, what are they going to do in response? Like, they just had their main sweeper Stomping Tantrum by Torkoal. Blunder Policy Torkoal. Now, I said speed was important. Why is the speed important? Speed is important because at +4 or 2 Shell Smashes, I'm going to get to that. At 2 Shell Smashes, +4, it hits 4, 5, 6. Now, why is 4, 5, 6 important? Ignoring Ninjas, let's check a Celdrill's top speed. I already know it's 427. That is faster than a Celdrill. So at +4, you're outspeeding every mon in the game. That is usable. Like, yeah, Ninjas exists, but Ninjas can't touch you. And it's also not a Pokemon. I refuse to believe it is. Baton Pass isn't a real move. With that said, you know what's better than getting 2 Shell Smashes off? Just having web support. I think Galvantula plus Torkoal in RU offensively is really good. I think being able to get webs and go for a shell smash means you outspeed everything. You're at +2 with pretty good special attack still. Like, Modest obviously it's much harder hitting, but even with Timid, you're getting to a 538 special attack, which is pretty nice, all things considered. Like, looking at something like Blastoise, your special attack's only 85 as well, and Blastoise is not using the power of Drought on its side. If you're at +2 special attack with Torkoal, and you can just click like either Eruption, maybe Fire Blast, or probably I'd run Flamethrower or Weather Ball on most teams. You can just do so much work late game, and even early game is just a breaker. I think White Herb on HO is really good early game on Webs HO, with specifically Galvantula. I'll get into that more. I think obviously Sash is great too for something later on if you have other early game breakers like Darmanitan, which works really well with Torkoal for the obvious reason of it's a sun Pokemon. And otherwise, I think Shell Smash speed is just surprisingly good. People aren't going to expect Torkoal to actually outspeed them, but at +2 with webs up, it does. It just does, and it's great. Because out of the Pokemon that avoid webs, so flying types and levitators, the mons that are gonna be used often, that can actually wall it, are Pelipper. Well, it's without Drizzle, so Pelipper's still gonna take a bunch from Eruption. Mantine, which is honestly your best check possible. And then you have Rotom Wash, which dies to Solar Beam. And aside from that, that's pretty much it. Noivern can do pretty well in walling you as well, especially if you're spec'd into something like Solar Beam, which it quad resists. Because it resists or is immune to every single move you throw out. But even then, we go to the calcs here, get Noivern, the utility set, with just max HP, max speed. You're still 2-hit carrying with Eruption a majority of the time, because it has to run boots. That's how insane it is. It doesn't care about any sort of immunities, it can just kill things. And, yeah, if we downgraded to, say, Weather Ball... Oh, wait, that was about the Sun, oh my god. With the Sun, Specs Weather Ball is pretty much always 2-hit carrying one of its best checks, and Eruption is doing 72 minimum. It's actually insane. Now, obviously, the issue is, Noivern can Draco you. And even without any investment, it's doing quite a bit. And with max investment, it's not gonna kill you ever. But the fact that your Eruption's gonna become pretty much worthless means that if you're running any move outside of Fire Blast or Flamethrower for your last slot on Specs, it can just actually hard wall you otherwise. And obviously the fact that it can roost after you've erupted once, especially if you're out of Trick Room, is pretty devastating for Torkoal. So that being said, it has good physical moves. It has Edgequake, it has good utility, it has Rocks, Yawn, which I think Yawn is incredible for bluffing a bulky set on Sun. You can Yawn something like turn 1, and then Shell Smash and just go straight in and start breaking stuff. I think the same can apply to Stealth Rock, with just saying Rocks up, and then Shell Smashing when somebody tries to get their defogger in, because generally Torkoal can't touch some defoggers. People send, if they have Wash Tom as their defogger, they don't send a Rotom Wash in, because it's usually a good check. Same thing with Noivern, but when they take that Shell Smash Eruption... So let's get rid of the specs here for a sec. If Torkoal is, let's also change this to Timid. If Torkoal is +2 with Eruption, it has a chance to Oko Noivern, which obviously it's not outspeeding. But even with Weather Ball, you're 2-hit KOing it. And sure, it can 2-hit KO back, but the fact you can put a lot of pressure on Noivern early means you're gonna pretty consistently keep your rocks up. which for some teams can be incredibly useful. And there's some other moves it can technically use. I think Mimic, Nature Power, they're all technically viable, but you're gonna have to base your entire team around it. I think Toxic's always gonna be useful, as much as I hate to say it. I think if physically, I mean, Rapid Spin's his best physical move, let's be honest. But otherwise, his physical moveset's decent. The only thing it's lacking is a good Fire Stab. Flame Wheel is its highest power move, or Heat Crash off of 80 kilograms of Torkoal. Which, I mean, he's quite a wide boy here, but in game he's not the widest, so it's not actually that useful. So sadly, this physical Shell Smash set I'm talking about here isn't good. It just isn't. It's not good at all. Anyway, as I've been saying with abilities, Drought obviously the best. Let's not kid ourselves. 1.5 times boost to Sun moves, Fire moves. What am I saying? It's just incredible. It's why Spec's Eruption hits so hard. It's why everything hits so hard with Torkoal. Drought makes the Pokemon. I think Shell Armor has a very small niche, with a funny stool set, including Amnesia, Iron Defense, and Rest. Because similar to Type Null in 1v1, Shell Armor makes it immune to crits, as Battle Armor does. And so in 1v1, Type Null is really good at just stalling mons out with Iron Defense, Confide, Rest, and it runs Flame Charge because of PP. But with Body Press on Torkoal's already good bulk, as I've said, like, you invest 4 in defense, and at +2 you're at 6-3-4 defense with Body Press. It's actually really good, and you can't get crit, is the best part. So if you're running some sort of, like, Spadef set, then you get upwards of, like, 260 Spadef, and then, like, still have over 300 defense just naturally. And you can just sort of do whatever, because at 1 Amnesia, 1 Iron Defense, there's very few mons that can actually pressure you. It's also kind of useful for, this is for UU, for, Inteleon, because people are going to start spamming that with Sniper. Because in Sun, without crits, Inteleon's just going to be pretty useless. What am I saying in Sun? Just in general, without crits, I don't actually think it would do enough to just kill you outright. And I think you can get rocks up in the meat. What am I saying? This isn't a check. Yeah, it doesn't do anything to Inteleon. But the fact that it can't crit you is funny. And if you have another Sunsetter on your team, you can technically Solar Beam it. Anyway, yeah, and then White Smoke's useless. I'm just being honest here. The only use ever I could find for White Smoke is a really dumb set with Earthquake, like Adamant Earthquake, White Smoke into Incineroar. Because Earthquake is going to 2-hit KO Incineroar because it doesn't run defense, which Eruption Torkoal can usually do anyway, but it has to sometimes rely on Specs damage from Earth Power. Well, it does, it has to rely on Specs, so you have to predict around it. But Torkoal can just click Earthquake twice, and White Smoke means Intimidate doesn't activate. And because of that, it doesn't rely on item, so it doesn't matter if it gets knocked off. So you can actually send Torkoal in, have, like, Heat Rock, and then just Earthquake it, because you can't get your stats lowered. And it's terrible. You don't run that set, but it's technically a set, nonetheless. On the topic of sets, we have this list. I think, consistency-wise, I think Specs Trick Room is definitely the best out of all of these. I think on Trick Room, Torkoal is great. I have quite a few UU Trick Room teams here. Let's have a look for one of them. Yeah, here I use Specs here with Eruption, Fire Blast, Earth Power, Solar Beam. Min speed obviously at 40. Good Trick Room setters in the tier. Bronze on Ruthless. They worked well with Torkoal. And just Torkoal can go off in Trick Room, honestly. I think it's actually the biggest threat on this team overall. It definitely does more damage than the other mons here. And while I definitely appreciate what Rhyperior does for Torkoal as well, especially with being able to consistently take on stuff like Mantine with Rock Blast, and not really take too much because Sun will be up and Solid Rock's going to reduce the water type damage, it's actually pretty good. I think Noivern, great partner for Trick Room, just because even on full Trick Room it's great to have a fast Pokemon, and I think Noivern is probably the best bet. On specs, I think you can run Boots Defog if you're worried about hazards for Torkoal, because it's definitely a concern if you don't have Boots. And I think Gastrodon is great as well. Storm Drain, very useful for Sun, for Torkoal specifically, for Rhyperior as well. Just a water immunity is really helpful. The fact it's really slow helps. The fact that after a Storm Drain it's a big threat. Life Orb gives it a lot of damage. Honestly, I haven't tried the Gastrodon team version much, but I think it's pretty consistent. I have two others here. I have a sorry, Crona's getting to me. I have a Stavalier version here. Other base 20 mon, very powerful, and I do like. I've used this one the most. I like this one a lot. I think this one is probably the most consistent because you have good fire resist for a Stavalier, despite the fact it's going to be in Sun sometimes. And I think just Stavalier can go off pretty hard along with Torkoal. Then I have a Surfetch set. So this is Focus Energy Leak because I'm an idiot. It technically gives you guaranteed crits, which is useful until you realize that crits don't really matter much when you can just use Sword Stance and go +2 anyway. But otherwise, I think Surfetched is a pretty decent partner. Probably not the best, because I feel like they break similar things. I think Torkoal doesn't struggle with rock types like most fire types can do because of Earth Power and Solar Beam. And that's really the only advantage Surfetched has. I do think Scrappy being immune to Intimidate is really useful for Incineroar. If you're like me and you can't fight it. But otherwise, I think there's definitely better pairings. I think Gastrodon and Torkoal is probably best on paper. I think Torkoal Stavalier is really good in game from what I've tested. And I think Torkoal Torkoal Surfetched is just decent. It's just alright. I think it still works, but I think there's definitely more you could do. Now, I have a lot of Torkoal teams. I think Torkoal just on Sun with a normal set is obviously good. I mean, it's the best Sun setter around. No hate Ninetales, but it's just better. It's bulkier, it has more utility for me. I don't think Ninetales' offensive pressure is as much as Torkoal's sheer power. It actually has higher special attack than Ninetales. It's base 85 while Ninetales is base 81. And as we've discussed, speed is no issue for Torkoal. Anyway, Trick Room, Specs, Charcoal, both great sets. Shell Smash, as I've said before, hits 304 speed with webs, basically hits 456, outspeeds most things. I think you can definitely make a team with either Rabombi, my favourite, which is Galvantula with it, or any other web setter you want. What other web setters even are there in the tier? Now that Slurpuff, technically, Victorvol, Rakronid. I mean, yeah, any web setter works well with it, to be honest. Just because of how Shell Smash gets you a surprising amount of speed. I prefer Galvantula just because, as I said before, Mantine is a huge problem for Torkoal. And just having an electric move, just an electric mon, 97 special attack, not the best, but, like, it still hurts, especially if you're running Life Orb, which you can do. I mean, usually running Sash, but you can run Life Orb Thunder, which still chunks it to hell and back. I think also, the other mon, Vigavolt, also great with Torkoal, another electric bug, which I think just handles Mantine really well. But otherwise, I don't know if I could recommend it. because I just appreciate Galvantula's speed, just innately, just allowing it to get up webs easier, which I think that Vigavolt can struggle to keep webs up all the time, because it definitely does a lot of damage, but with Torkoal already there, I don't know if you need the damage, and I much prefer Galvantula's speed. And also ability to spread paralysis with Thunder. And then you have the dumb blunder policies that I was talking about. Don't run it. Physical sets, as I've said, he has decent, like, decent moves outside of actual Fire Stab, which is what makes the special set so good. So don't run it. Power Herb Solar Beam. This is, I put draft here because I definitely think this should work in a draft game. Specifically against Rain that has Politoed as a setter. I think if Politoed comes in to try to stop Sun, because pardon me, in a Sun versus Rain matchup, you're probably going to lead Torkoal, expecting them to lead Politoed, because then you'll be slower and you'll get Drought off. But they might immediately double into Drizzle first turn instead of leading Politoed. But being able to have Power Herb Solar Beam and just kill it is honestly very useful. If I get the calc here, I mean, this is max Bedef, max HP, and it's... Alright, no, never mind, that's not a set. Alright, once again, don't run these sets, they're not good. Don't do it. Nope, nope. This set, though, this is the good set. Rest Torque, Iron Defense, Body Press. Now, we're sort of not actually having offensive sets anymore. Because I think I've said all I need to say. I think Rest Torque, Iron Defense, Body Press is a set a lot of mons can use. Runa Regis is another big mon that can use it. But I like Torkoal a lot because of its immunity to being burned, which can hurt these mons a lot because of the fact that burn halves the base power of your move over just their attack, which halves your body press damage. I also think Torkoal's innate bulk is very good for the strat. And I think if there's like a time in draft usually where you can actually run this and just clean through a team, if it has like no ghost, if it has no good special attackers that aren't like types that can't break Torkoal, you know, I think it's actually really good. Less offensive, of course, but I still think it's good. And on this set specifically, I think unless your team has other uses for Sun, I think it's actually better to run Shell Armor. Unless they have some water type you want neutered. Like, I think Shell Armor, just Iron Defense. Like, you're not getting broken with your defense. Max Defense, Bold is hitting 416 defense. Like, you're already hard to kill. So at 1 Iron Defense, you're pretty much unkillable from a physical side. And you can just rest off any hits and just sleep talk up and just start hitting stuff. Next set is... the worst thing, which is that set, but get rid of a sleep talk and replace it with amnesia. So now you can get to +6 in both defenses. I honestly think this set's decent. This is definitely a very stooly set. Just resting and just becoming as strong as possible. As I said before, it's similar to the type null set in 1v1 you might see. But it does work, honestly. I think in draft especially, this can just work as a win con. It's similar to Cosmic Power Mew, but less malicious, because ghosts are immune to it, and you can't just have Mew, where you need Sableye to be immune to both of its moves. Next you have Offensive Rocks Boots, which I think is honestly the most practical set you can run. Which is going to be like Boots or Heat Rock, depending on the item you want. Drought on a Sun team with either Rocks or like Spin revealed, and then as soon as you do that, either you're a set with like Fire Blast, Solar Beam, or even better, you're a Shell Smash set you, as I said before, you set up rocks, you set up a yawn, you just shell smash up, and then you just go in. Just at one shell smash, it can just start going in. Because if people don't recognize how fast it is, they might send in something like slower, and just take a bunch from a sun boosted Fire Blast. It's honestly probably really good set. Boots I prefer just because I don't even think on Sun you need Heat Rock's length, because I think Torkoal is so naturally bulky that you can just keep it alive for a while. And I think most Sun teams can probably afford a slot, a sunny day like slot on another mon, so that you don't need to put so much pressure on Torkoal anyway. I think, as I said, yeah, Yawn, great for Shell Smash, but this is specifically for balance rather than on Sun. Because you don't want to be surprised seeing, like, Torkoal being offensive on, like, Sun with these other threats. But on, like, a Sun balance team with this, probably Shiftry as your quote-unquote offensive core, and then your defense you'd probably have, like Rotom Wash, Celebi, and something else, probably a Stavalier. Like, people would think, oh, okay, so that's just like a bulkier, like, Sun sort of balanced looking thing, you know, Torkoal is the bulky Fire, Water, Grass core. The Stavalier is not the Pokemon I should be choosing. For some reason I thought I was running Rain here, and a Stavalier got its weakness resisted. No, where's the other thing? This is why you should probably prepare for stuff like this. But yeah, let's say you have Rhyperior, you know, that's a Sun balance, it looks like. But then, instead of, like, maybe offensive Rotom Wash, you actually have offensive Torkoal. And on a team like this, you can definitely afford Yawn, giving rocks to Rhyperior. So you can run Yawn, just, like, lead, run Yawn on something, and then get to Shell Smash, and then just go in. Because Fire Blast Solar Beam is already good enough coverage. There's definitely stuff it doesn't hit. Specifically, it doesn't hit Incineroar and other fire types. But otherwise, I think this is also a really practical set if you want to try offensive Torkoal. And finally, you have the best set, which is Shell Smash Explosion, where you just Shell Smash and then explode. For no reason. I like this set because people would laugh at it and they would underestimate you. Because Pokemon is a mental game, and if you're winning mentally, then you're winning in the game. And if you just Shell Smash up and then explode, they'll be flabbergasted, completely confused. You will be unbeatable in that position. Anyway, after having a look at the sets, I've talked about most of the items already. Specs, best item for Trick Room, very consistent, just increases its damage to exceedingly high levels. Charcoal, great too. White Herb for Shell Smash. Power Herb, if you're an idiot. Blunder Policy, if you're an idiot. Sash, pretty useful on HO. Boots, if you're not fully dedicated to it. Band, if you're an idiot. And Heat Rock, if you're on a Sun team but you want to apply offensive pressure as well. I've already talked through most of its options. I definitely want an electric type, so I've listed 5 of them in a row. Galvantula, I think, is definitely the mon you want to be using if you're running HO, because just being an electric type to deal with Mantine, setting up webs, which means Torkoal can outspeed everything at +2, is incredible. Otherwise, I think the Rotom forms function great with it as well. Obviously, no Rotom Heat, unless you're doing OU. Which means I think bulky Rotom Wash and bulky Rotom Fan function pretty well with it. Nasty Plot Alolan Raichu is great for equally applying pressure along with Torkoal. Toxtricity, Specs is probably the best way of dealing with Mantine imaginable, which is pretty much your only, like, true counter. Healerless, great as well, though, you pretty much I mean, it's great on Sun, which is a reason why it's so good. But it's also pretty useful with Tri-Skin sometimes. Especially with something like a team like Rhyperia, like Dom. Like, if your team is water weak, you can run Tri-Skin. Even if it sounds really dumb. Anyway, yeah, just don't run Tri-Skin, what am I saying? Just run Solar Power. It's better. Healer list on Sun is already great because it checks all the water types that grass types can't. And if you're running Torkoal, then your Solar Beam is your grass type. So healer list is great for that. Then you have Trick Room setters, Bronzor and Relentless. I think both of them can do a lot for Torkoal as well. Relentless can run AV Knock as well, or just knock on alongside a Trick Room team, which knocking off some items can be really good for Torkoal, just to be able to get in and go off. I think Bronzor's access to screens, access to rocks, can put a lot of pressure off of Torkoal as a stealth rock setter, and is the best Trick Room setter, period. I mean, not in VGC right now, Dustlop's better, that's just because it has access to Bulldoze. And then Rhyperia is great as just a solid war type switch in if you're like Rock Polish Weakness Policy. It's a good combo you can run with it, it's not just VGC. There's also great on Trick Room, great for taking knocks because it just doesn't really take much damage, great stealth rock setter for it. It's overall just pretty useful. Obviously, I can't not mention Sun, and Darmanitan is the best Sun mon it can work with right now because Venusaur's banned. And yeah, I mean, what can I say about Dom that helps? They're both solid breakers in the Sun, and Dom technically does more damage, but looking at defense-wise, Steelix, Avalog, like these huge, like 200, 180, these huge defense stats, go to Spadef, 150, but it's the highest because Shuckle's no longer in the tier, and Shuckle has 20 HP. But I mean, looking at these like super bulky stuff, if you're playing in RU, the bulkiest thing you're getting is Dustnor, and nobody likes Dustnor. Then you have Dustlops. Nobody likes Dustlops. It's such a momentum killer in singles because it doesn't do anything. So realistically, the best one you're going to find in RU is going to be Cursula, which still doesn't like taking Eruption. Like, let's get Cursula here. Cursula is still, let's get Modest, choice specs in the Sun. Like, Weatherball, even without specs, is still close to a 2-hit KO, and that's max HP Cursula. The insane power of Torkoal knows no bounds, and some mons that can wall Darmanitan can't wall Torkoal. And it's just super useful for Sun to have another big fire-type hitter, because water types get to always abuse Rain's boost with Swift Swim, because every single Swift Swimmer is a water type apart from Beartick, and Beartick is the best Pokemon. But Sun doesn't have any Chlorophyll mons that are fire types. Every single one that you see here, including the ones up here, are all grass types, which means that they don't actually get to use fire moves, aside from mons that get Weather Ball as well. Which is basically, outside of mons that are either bad or not special attackers, pretty much just includes Venusaur. And Venusaur's banned in UU because of how good it was with it. Honestly, Torkoal Venusaur is an OU pair, but with OU as it is right now, it's very tight in terms of usage, and it could occasionally struggle with for move slots for Venusaur specifically, so that's why you don't see it as much in OU, but obviously, same reason that Teleport's dropped. It's not that it's bad, it's just there isn't enough room in OU. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, yeah. Other Trick Room setters, none that I can really think of, specifically off the top of my head. But you know, stuff like Xatu, like, I mean, I guess some of these you could run Trick Room with. Aromatisse probably works decently well. Claydol is something I would think of, as is Jellicent or Rune Regis. But otherwise, I don't think any Trick Room setters really do it as well as Ruthless and Bronzong do it for Torkoal. And I think they are definitely the best on it. So, I mean, as I've said all the archetypes it can fit on. It's great on balance, with like a Sun offensive core. Great on HO as its own Mon or HO Web Sun. Great on Trick Room, insane on Trick Room actually. This is definitely its best team if you're not running full Sun. Stool, the Amnesia Iron Defense set is dumb, but it works, especially if you have something to set Toxic Spikes up, like Rune Regis, which is another mon that does actually work decently well with Torkoal, but stacking huge defensive mons might be an issue for some people. So you might want to consider something like Rose Raid with it, because I believe Rose Raid gets Weatherball. Yeah, Rose Raid gets a Weatherball, which is useful. And otherwise, yeah, it's the best Sunsetter in the game. It's the best mon in the game. At +2 with webs up, this little boy can outspeed giants and everything in between. And it can 2-hit pretty much every single Pokemon apart from Mantine. I honestly think that Torkoal is an exceedingly good breaker, and I think people who just run it bulky all the time are idiots. And on that note, I think that's all I have to say. This Pokemon is nuts, and if you aren't using it, you're nuts.